Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the UK Finance webinar channel. My name is Helen John, Education Manager at UK Finance, and today, for the next hour, to discuss how virtual IBANs can add value to the payment proposition, I'm delighted to be joined this hour by James Butland from Airwallex and Mishal from Banking Circle. Just before I hand over to James and Mishal, I'll cover off a few housekeeping items. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets that you can use. If you have any questions during the webinar, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. We will try to answer these questions during the webinar, but if a fuller answer is needed or if we run out of time, it will be answered via email. Please note that when you ask a question, your name is not disclosed to other webinar attendees. A copy of today's slide deck is available in the resource list widget, which is a green folder at the bottom of the screen. If you want to contact James or Michelle directly, please click on the mail envelope next to the presenter's photo. To the right of the resource list, you'll also notice a survey icon, which if you click on will ask you about your future learning requirements. You can expand your slide area by clicking on the maximize icon on the top right-hand side of the slide area, or by dragging the bottom right-hand corner of the slide area. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. An on-demand version of the webinar will be available at the end of the day and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. So we intend to present for about 40 minutes and then answer your questions for the remaining 20 minutes. I will now hand over to James and Michelle.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for dialing in into this hopefully exciting webinar on the virtual IBAN solution. My name is Mishal Ruparel. I am the General Manager for the Banking Circle, based at the London office, and I'm joined here with James, VP of Global Banking at Airwallex. Morning, James. Good morning, everyone. Airwallex is a client of ours currently utilizing the solution, so hopefully we can bring a lot of this to life through James's part of the presentation. And yes, as said earlier, we're going to spend the first 30 minutes talking through the solution and then hopefully open up for some Q&A. Before jumping straight into the presentation, it's probably worth, for context, I just talk a bit about who we are. The Banking Circle is an established provider of banking services to the financial tech industry. We have been running the business now for approximately 5 years. We have 3 offices, London, Copenhagen and Luxembourg, and we're currently processing approximately 80 billion of flow annualized. So we are an established provider in this space. Our clients are typically financial tech businesses. I know that's probably the most overused word, so I'll just sort of break that down as to what that is. Payments companies, regulated payments companies, banks, challenger banks, FX businesses, businesses that focus on cross-border payments, marketplaces. Those are the kind of businesses that we generally work with and generally support. Our products can easily be verticalized in 4 components: payments, accounts, foreign exchange, and lending. And the virtual account solution sits under our accounts vertical. Regarding accounts, we're able to issue both physical and virtual accounts in 25 different currencies, as well as multiple jurisdictions. So just to break it down, we are a provider of services to financial tech businesses, banking services, and our focus for this presentation is on our virtual accounts, which is part of our accounts component. So what is a virtual account? I'm just going to skip the slide. Apologies. There we go. What is a virtual account? It's right now a bit of a buzzword in the industry, and I think the best way of explaining what it is, fundamentally, it is a real account number. The IBAN stands for International Banking Account Number, and that is exactly what it is. It is an account number. These account numbers we view as building blocks and they're used to help businesses address a number of different issues: reconciliation, settlement, payments. I'll talk about these scenarios in more detail. But what we have to remember is that these are account numbers, and we're using these account numbers to address these challenges that many businesses face today. One of the key challenges that businesses face are reconciliation. I'm well aware reconciliation is probably not the most exciting topic, but many businesses today, if you were to highlight what's their number one pain point, it's going to be reconciliation. And the virtual IBAN solution addresses that quite comfortably. If you're a business today that has many inbound payments from many different suppliers, invoice payments, etc., you're going to have challenges within the reconciliation space. So to bring this to life, I'm going to use an example. Let's talk about a travel company. Assuming we are a large travel operator, the operator will receive many payments from many different suppliers. These could be invoice receivables. They could be for many different reasons that these operators are receiving these payments. Pretty often when you're making these payments, you're making the payment to one account. These suppliers need to put references on the accounts, and hopefully the end receiver, which is the operator, will be able to sort of make sense of all of these inbound payments coming in. So when they look at their bank statement, they're going to see loads and loads of payments coming through with all of these references trying to identify what that payment is relating to. The travel operator will probably have quite a large reconciliation team. It will be expensive, there's headcount involved, and there is a high likelihood that someone's going to put the wrong referencing field in, and that's going to completely disrupt their reconciliation process. The virtual IBAN solution literally resolves that issue completely. The travel operator will receive a master account, and attached to this, there will be many virtual accounts. Each one of these accounts is assigned to a sender, and the sender will always pay the funds to a dedicated account specifically for that payment. It is literally 100% matching. The payment goes in to an account specifically dedicated for that sender. The travel operator, from a reconciliation perspective, makes life considerably easier. This travel operator may be also operating in different markets, in different currencies. Again, the virtual IBAN solution can accommodate that. The accounts can be in multiple currencies. The accounts can be localized in different jurisdictions, which allows the sender to access local payment rails to make their payments. To put it simple, it immediately resolves a pain point for many businesses that are experiencing reconciliation challenges. So that's one area. It's probably not the most exciting area, but it is a pain point, and that's the primary purpose of how many businesses today are using the virtual IBAN solution. The following slide talks about the comparison between the virtual IBAN and using a referencing solution. The key takeaway, I'm not going to go through these points in detail. I think they're pretty self-explanatory. I think the key takeaway is that under the referencing solution, you basically have one single account that uses payment references to reconcile. And under the virtual IBAN solution, you have unique virtual IBANs to identify the payments. That immediately provides full segregation of inbound funds, and it provides immediate reconciliation of funds. I'll move on from reconciliation. I'm sure everyone's probably done with reconciliation now. If I talk about two more scenarios, which I think is also quite exciting, I'm going to address two other user cases where the virtual IBAN solution is definitely adding value. The first is for businesses that are involved in cross-border payments. And then finally, businesses that are involved in marketplaces. And that's where I'll lend the call across to James, which will make more sense because your business is obviously applied more towards the marketplace.
Absolutely.
So, if I talk about cross-border payments, slide 5 illustrates how we apply the model to a payments company. The black box is a physical master account where funds are held. The virtual accounts sit underneath the black box, and there's no limit to the number of virtual accounts. So a user may want 100 accounts, may want 10,000 accounts, may want 100,000 accounts. We've had providers that want accounts in the millions. So we can, from a scaling perspective, this is really quite a solution that can really scale as far as the client needs are concerned. The virtual accounts can either be in the name of the provider or they can be in the name of the client. And this is where it can get quite unique. The sender will send funds into the virtual account. The virtual account will be in the name of the sender. The payments company can carry out whatever FX they need to do and then execute the payment out. The end beneficiary will always see who the originator of that payment is. So the payment integrity remains unchanged. This is unique. It is a very powerful advantage in the market. I think one of the things which many businesses experience when they're using traditional payout providers is the end beneficiary doesn't actually see who the originator of those funds are. Under this solution, the payment is fully segregated. It goes through the sender's account. The account is in the sender's name, and the end beneficiary sees exactly who the originator of that payment is. The third user case, which we're all familiar with, which I'll talk about in a bit of detail, and then James will pick up from here, is where we use the solution for collections. This is a solution that we're currently working with Airwallex on. If I go back to how we see virtual accounts, we see virtual IBANs as building blocks, and in this scenario, they're used for receiving funds and not necessarily used for making individual payments. We have deployed this model for marketplaces that require local seller accounts for collections before funds are repatriated back to their home account to pay back to sellers. Keeping with marketplaces, it can be also used for buyers that want to pay into a local account. I think generally it's quite prevalent when you've got businesses that are doing lots of B2B payments. The last thing they want to do is make lots of cross-border SWIFT payments that can take 3 to 5 days and it can be quite costly. If they've got a local account that they can make payments into, the virtual IBAN solution really helps with that process. I don't really want to ruin the surprise on this because this is fundamentally where Airwallex comes in. So I think thank you for listening. James, maybe you want to go into a bit more detail.
Great, thanks very much, Mish. So just to introduce myself and Airwallex. Airwallex, we're a global collection, payout and FX provider. We specialise in Asia Pacific and also mainland China is where we find a large amount of our client base. Our client base is predominantly businesses looking to transact globally. So the opportunity we're really going after is the global e-commerce flow. In 2017, this was at $2.3 trillion US. That is looking to hit 2.8 trillion this year, and by 2021, that is forecast to hit 4.8 trillion US dollars in terms of global e-commerce flows. So it's a huge opportunity as of today, but it's growing rapidly as well, pretty much doubling from 2017 to 2021. So I'm going to talk to you today about how we utilize Saxo's technology to service our clients. In my example, I'm going to talk about marketplaces. I'm going to use Amazon as my example, just because it's the most well known, but this is just one of many marketplaces. So in Europe, you've got eBay, Cdiscount, Walmart, Wish. There's probably a good 20 or 30 large-scale marketplaces, then a large tail of smaller marketplaces, all who can use this, all of which our sellers can sell on and use this solution on. So I'll just talk about Amazon because, to be honest, statistics are most readily available. So in Europe, Chinese sellers, Chinese merchants, account for 25% of European Amazon marketplace sellers. So a quarter of what you see on Amazon when you log on is coming from Chinese sellers. That is predominantly the same all across Europe. If we look at some of the headline economies, it's 25% in the UK, France, slightly higher in Spain and Italy, and then Germany's at 17%. So it's around sort of the 25% across Europe of goods being sold by Chinese sellers. So I'm going to give you an example of a fictional client, Beijing Limited. Apologies, it's not a more imaginative name, but I thought it would be a good way of just sort of walking through the flow and being clear on where each party is. So Beijing Limited are based in Beijing in China. They manufacture umbrellas, and what they do is they ship their umbrellas to China, and they want to sell it to people like you and I when we go and buy an umbrella on Amazon. So over the course of the month, Amazon sells the umbrellas to you and I. We go and buy them, and then Amazon collects GBP for Beijing Limited. At the end of each fortnight, month, whatever the payment settlement cycle of the marketplace is, the marketplace will settle the funds back to the seller, in this case, back to the seller in China. Now, the amount that the marketplace, Amazon, Wish, etc. charge varies depending on the volume, where the seller is, but broadly speaking, I think we can say between 1% and 2% will be charged by the marketplace to send the funds back to Beijing Limited in China. Now, if you're a manufacturer of umbrellas or anything really, and you're selling it on Amazon, 1% to 2% is significant, and any margin you can save on the flow of funds is hugely beneficial to your business model. So that's a key problem for the sellers selling on marketplaces in the West. And also, when you receive those funds back from Amazon or a marketplace, you're subject to the usual cross-border issues. So you don't know when the funds are going to arrive, you don't know the FX rates, you don't know when it's going to settle back to your account in China or wherever you are based. So the problem for the Chinese sellers here is key. It's three things as I see it. Firstly, fees. So the marketplace is charging you. They may say it's a free withdrawal, but as we all know, when you go to Bureau de Change at the airport and it's a free transfer or 0% commission, in fact it really isn't. There's FX, there's settlement charges, and it's around 1% to 2% of the total funds. Secondly, the problem is transparency. When Amazon on the marketplace sends those funds back to your home account in China, you know when Amazon sends them, but you have no idea when they'll arrive. So you need payment certainty when your funds are going to arrive back in your home account, so you continue your business manufacturing your goods or buying from your supplier in China. And thirdly is flexibility. All that GBP that you've collected onshore in the UK is sent back to you in China. You may not want all that money sent back to you in China. Maybe you've got shippers to pay in the UK, suppliers, postage. Maybe you have to pay refunds back to your clients locally in the UK. You want the flexibility to hold those funds locally and only send back to China or your home account the actual amount you want to send back. So that's the key three problems I see: fees, transparency, and flexibility. So there is another way of doing this, and this is the solution we have put in place with the help of Banking Circle and their technology. So what we can do is we can open a virtual account for Beijing Limited in the UK under a master Airwallex account. Banking Circle will give us a number of virtual accounts for us to assign to merchants, and we can assign each merchant an individual account. We can then collect funds from them locally, in this case in GBP. So Beijing Limited can give their UK bank details to Amazon UK. Amazon UK then settles GBP into the virtual account. Payments is received over the UK domestic payment network, so there's no international payment charges. And payments received in GBP to a GBP account, so there's no FX charges. Beijing Limited is then holding GBP in the UK. This addresses the three problems raised before. Firstly, on the fees. Amazon's paying GBP to GBP, no international charges or FX. Transparency, Beijing Limited knows when Amazon pays, as they did before in the first example. The difference is, here, they know when it will arrive in their UK account. Whether it's sent faster payments, chaps, backs, the longest it's going to be is T+2. So they have that payment certainty of when the payment is going to arrive into their UK account. And thirdly, flexibility. Beijing Limited now holds their own funds, and they're in control of the payment and the FX back to China. So what happens now? I agree that Beijing Limited doesn't have the money back in their account in China, which is ultimately where they want it. But what they can do is they can log in to their Airwallex dashboard, and they can see they're holding GBP locally in the UK. They can then instruct the payment back to China at a transparent FX rate. And this is really key here. As we mentioned earlier on the fees that a marketplace is charge, and that 1 to 2%, some of that markup is going to be in FX. What Airwallex can do is we agree with the Chinese seller when they sign up to our platform, the exact FX rate, the exact markup on the FX, we will charge them. This will be an institutional rate, and it'll be a lot lower than they get from the marketplace. So they know when they send those funds back from the UK to China exactly what they will be charged. So we've agreed that exchange rate, and they have payment certainty of what's going to arrive back in China, and then funds can be sent back to China in an agreed time frame. So it's not like they're waiting for the marketplace to send the money back. We have operations in China, and we can settle those funds back onshore. We can do it in CNY, CNH, Hong Kong dollar, however they want to hold the funds. And then if Beijing Limited doesn't want to send everything back to China, maybe they want to keep some money in the UK for refunds, paying local suppliers, VAT receipts, they can do that. So say they made £1 million over the month, they can send 900,000 back to China, and they can keep 100,000 in the UK. It really gives them the flexibility to manage their payment flows in their business. So using the virtual account solution, we address those three problems: the fees, transparency, and flexibility. So here we've just talked about one example of Beijing Limited selling umbrellas in the UK. The great thing about the virtual account solution is the expandability of it. So Beijing Limited can now expand their offering not only to the UK, but to the whole of the Eurozone, and with Airwallex using the Banking Circle platform. So they can now collect funds all over Europe, selling on all those marketplaces I've mentioned before. And this is totally scalable. So as we add more currencies, they can then sell in more locations. So they've now got the flexibility to sell all over Europe to a much wider client base without those charges that we mentioned before. Another thing to mention is they may not be selling on one marketplace, they could be selling on 5 marketplaces. So that gives them the ability to collect from different marketplaces, hold those funds in country, in those currencies, and then when they want to, do one payment back to China. So that's what we are using the Banking Circle platform for, really to service those sellers and to address those 3 pain points around fees, transparency, and flexibility. Aside from that, as Mish mentioned, you've got the increased benefits of reconciliation. This can also be rolled out to actual marketplaces can use them for real-time movement of funds. So we see this as our core product offering, but this is by no means the only product offering. There are many more solutions which you can use the virtual bank account product for. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you both very much. So I'd like to invite the audience, if you have any questions to ask, to please submit them through the question and answer widget at the bottom of the screen. I do have a few questions that have come in. The first one is, I think this is for you, Mish. Are you able to give more use cases for the collection solution? And which industries do you typically see this solution being used in?
Okay. So there, I think with the virtual IBAN collection solution, there's a number of cases. It's aside from the ones that we've spoken about today. So some of our other clients have used, and again, we talk about the accounts being building blocks. You know, we can apply the same logic to different situations. Some of those scenarios, for example, include prepaid card loads. So we have clients within the prepaid card space. They've asked for batches of virtual IBANs, ordinarily for program managers, which they can then assign to an underlying cardholder. So whenever the cardholder is loading their card, that balance can be reflected in the virtual account. The same applies to where you've got corporate loading as well. So you've got prepaid providers that are servicing corporate cards. They want a mechanism to segregate the inbound payments, the funding payments for those corporates. The virtual IBAN solution again lends itself well for that. Other examples, invoice payments. I think I mentioned that already under the reconciliation topic, where our clients are using the same solution. Insurance premiums. So there needs to be a mechanism where funds are being collected by customers, where you can clearly identify who that customer is. The insurance space, this particular solution lends itself very well. I think right now the primary driver for the solution is the marketplace space. I mean, I think it's adapted itself very well in this particular sector for a lot of the benefits that James has highlighted.
Yeah, I think the marketplace is really key. Any business looking to do or sell their products internationally, and I think strangely in 2018 we've seen a lot more barriers to international trade come up than there has been before. You've got things like trade tariffs, you've got the impending Brexit on our doorstep. So any way you can save money, being a marketplace seller is really key. And I think 1 to 2% on your sale of goods, and that's a significant margin. That's what a lot of companies will be thrilled with, a 1 to 2% uplift. So I think the marketplace opportunity is really key here.
And I think with that, it's important to highlight that these accounts, when you refer to the marketplace model, are local accounts.
Yeah.
They're basically localized accounts, so someone can make a local payment as opposed to having to wait 3 or 5 days and go through the whole cross-border pain, which this solution really does add benefit to. And
anyone, I know a lot of people on the call are probably familiar with sort of cross-border payments, but the transparency and trying to find out where a cross-border payment is a real headache, which you just don't have in local ACH payment networks. So that's a key benefit in terms of receiving funds. You know exactly where they're going to be.
Brilliant.
I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, I think it does, very much so. I think I've got one now specifically for Airwallex.
Mm-hmm.
Does the virtual UK account in your example of Beijing Limited need to have a corresponding physical account set up in the name of Beijing Limited, or are these centralized at Airwallex and segregated by a virtual account in the name of Beijing Limited? Are there client money implications for this? What a very long question.
No, I think I understand the question. So in that model, Beijing Limited are Airwallex client in China. So they're signed up in China to Airwallex. They'll sign our master agreement in China, and we would then offer them the virtual account in the UK. So full AML KYC is done on the merchant in China. We review them, we sign them up, and then we collect for them locally in the UK.
Okay, brilliant. And then another question. I have a use case which would involve issuing of a large number of virtual IBANs. Are there any scaling issues? Could you, for example, issue 100,000 virtual IBANs in a single batch? And if so, how long would it take?
Good question. We have clients that ask us for 100 IBANs. We have clients that have asked us for well over 100,000 IBANs. I think It is very dependent on the provider and the specific solution. If, for example, the solution requires actual onboarding of those underlying merchants, the accounts need to be in the merchant's name, that process will take longer. If the IBANs do not need to be assigned from an onboarding perspective, so they're all in the name of the provider, then that process is a lot quicker. But regarding 100,000, that for us is BAU. There's not really a challenge there for us to issue that many IBANs. And we're talking days as opposed to weeks to get a batch issued at that scale. But like I said, it's very dependent on, is this a marketplace solution? Is this a cross-border payment solution for a payments company? Is it for reconciliation purposes? We need to understand what the solution is for before we can sort of commit from a timescale perspective.
Okay.
But 100,000 IBANs is, well, it's just BAU for us.
And I suppose that's one of the benefits, one of the reasons why we partnered with Banking Circle, was that speed to market, and the ability to issue new batches of IBANs quite easy. We don't want to wait, a month or 6 weeks if we've got a new client coming on board. So real speed to market is one of the benefits of using Banking Circle.
Okay. So did you say you could do that in a matter of days?
Yes. But it is again very dependent on the requirement.
Okay.
So I think the key point to add is onboarding. Is do we need to onboard the underlying merchants, because there's always going to be a delay because you've got the KYC AML aspect that you need to consider.
Okay.
Or is it a case that the IBANs are actually going to be used for reconciliation purposes, where you don't necessarily need to onboard the underlying merchants? That's basically instant. That's a very quick process for us.
Okay, brilliant. James, this one I think for you. In the example from Airwallex, the merchant holds a virtual account. Who is the physical account holder?
Airwallex holds the master account with Banking Circle in the UK. So it'll be our account, Airwallex. Okay,
brilliant. And how does the cross-border application work? Can these accounts be credited directly via SWIFT? Maybe?
I can take this one?
Yeah, sure.
So it depends. Firstly, yes. The short answer is yes. All the accounts are accessible via SWIFT. But the way we built our infrastructure, if we have access to the local rails, so for example in the UK, faster payments, in the Eurozone, SEPA, then that payment will go through as a local payment. And what Banking Circle is doing is that we are expanding that reach. So, wherever possible, we are attempting or trying to go local in that particular market. The list today is growing, so we've got substantial currencies that we are providing local access to. And like I said, as and when we can't provide that local access, the payment will go through as a SWIFT payment.
Okay.
Yeah, and in the example I gave on Beijing Limited, so we will collect the GBP for them, and we will do a bulk payment every fortnight, every month over SWIFT back to China or Hong Kong, wherever they're based.
Okay.
So it will touch the SWIFT network, and I think payments nowadays you can't get away from the SWIFT network. It's what we use for international settlement still. So yes, as Mish said, preferable for us to use local. We use local where we can, but we do have to use SWIFT as well.
Okay.
And I think just to add on that as well, that's a good point, because these collections are normally made locally in sterling and euros, so they go through faster payments or SEPA.
Yeah.
Then it's a SWIFT payment. Or the other option as well is where we've onboarded the end correspondent bank, which is something that we're currently also building from a scaling perspective. And that will also speed up the settlement to instant settlement when we're going across borders.
Okay. Brilliant. That's great. Thank you. Are funds held on the virtual account or on the master account?
In what context?
There's no. That was the question
as a whole.
Sorry.
The actual physical funds are held with the master account.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The virtual IBANs are fundamentally used for references, for reconciliation purposes, but the physical funds are actually held at master account level.
Right. Okay. Another question that's come in. I understand that you propose a localized account in the UK for GBP. For other currencies, do you propose each time localized accounts in the country of the currency, or do you have them in the UK too?
So From my experience, I would always, for this model, I'd always propose you hold a local account in the country you're collecting in.
Okay.
So in GBP, hold a local GBP virtual account. If you're collecting in France, hold a local account in France. Now, in the SEPA zone, the idea or the theory is it doesn't matter where you have a euro account, it should be a free movement of money. In some countries, you don't have that flexibility. So in Spain, you know, Spanish banks still charge you from sending money from Spain to Germany, even though they shouldn't. So I think the optimum model is always having a local currency account in the local country you're collecting in. In SEPA zone, you can do it with a master account in, say, Germany or France or Italy. It's always preferential to have it in the local country.
Okay. I suppose that follows on because there's a question here which is asking, is the product offering focused on the UK market, or do you see also continental Europe opportunities as well? So I think
absolutely. In the current product offering, there's UK, there's Euro, so there's nothing to stop you opening virtual accounts in the UK and Euro at the moment.
Yeah, I think the same applies from our perspective as well. This is, you know, today the solution is Euro, is the UK Euro. We are building that to offer additional collection accounts for the marketplace sector. But if we step outside the marketplace sector, we can offer these accounts in 25 different currencies. Okay. So that solution will take this at a more global perspective.
Okay. And what about, will the sender of the payment know that IBAN is virtual?
No.
Do they know that?
No. Because fundamentally these are real account numbers.
Okay.
You know, this isn't a real account number from a sender's perspective. It's in the sender's name if it is for that particular cross-border solution. So the end beneficiary will see exactly who the sender is. It'll be clearly stated in the bank statement that ABC Limited is the company that has made that payment, and there will be no referencing to the fact that this is a virtual IBAN that's executed the payment.
And that's really key, or else the product wouldn't work. You know, we wouldn't, if you knew it wasn't a real account, it was going to someone else's name. You know, that's the whole purpose of the virtual account, that it goes to a named account and you know who that person is.
Okay. If you issue a virtual IBAN to a client, does the client have separate access to view this account?
So they can, so with the Airwallex offering, the client, the merchant in my case, Beijing Limited in China, they can see their UK virtual account, their Euro virtual account, they can see the balances on them. When they receive funds, they can instruct the funds to send them back to China. They've got full visibility on those accounts. Okay.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, every credit and debit that's made through these accounts is reported on. You know, the reporting can be made available via an API. There's various different formats in which the client can access the reporting, whether it's SWIFT or traditional SWIFT intra, as well as end-of-day reporting. MT942s, MT940s, all of these different channels can be used to basically retrieve the relevant data, which I think is important, as James highlighted, is an end-to-end solution for the client to retrieve the relevant payment details that they need.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. Well, I have to say thank you very much, everybody. You're sending in lots of questions. I've got another one. James, how do you cover legal possible impediments, such as the requirement to report virtual IBANs to National Bank, or the fact that the funds are held on behalf of a Chinese company and not Airwallex is the fund owner?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question, so I'm happy to answer that directly afterwards. From our side, you know, we're contracted with the clients. We collect the funds from the client and we remit them back to the client's account. So I'm more than happy to go into detail with that individual if they want to discuss afterwards.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. Is Airwallex providing the virtual IBANs, and how do you connect them to a physical bank account?
So I think that really comes down to the banking circle technology. So we have the master account who holds the banking circle, and underneath that we have a range of virtual accounts. So that's really all done on the back of banking circles tech.
That's our infrastructure. So we provide the master account to Airwallex, and that is done on a currency basis. and assigned to the master account, you will have as many required virtual accounts. And then James will obviously assign those virtual accounts to the individual sellers. The funds are obviously paid to the virtual account, but the physical funds are actually crediting the master account.
Okay.
And then as far as the collection model is concerned, those funds are then repatriated back to an account with Airwallex for local disbursements to the individual sellers.
Okay, brilliant. Can you support global cash management with the virtual IBANs without having marketplaces, Amazon, for example, in between?
That again, absolutely. That if I move away from the marketplace sector, these, like I said, I know it sounds a bit cheesy, but these are basically building blocks. You know, we can assign or work with the accounts in various different user cases. If you want to use the account infrastructure for your own internal cash management purposes, absolutely, this is exactly what the solution is for. Liquidity distribution is probably a good topic that this solution again lends itself quite well. So anything that involves internal reconciliation, cash management purposes, liquidity distribution, absolutely, this is what the solution can be used for.
Okay. And what about the merchants? Can they make payments out of the virtual IBANs?
It depends, again, on the solution that we've actually provided to the client and different user cases. But the solution that we're presenting today is specifically focused on the Airwallex structure.
Yep.
So in terms of our product currently, we just do the collections. We don't do the payouts on the other side. We've just seen real demand for the collection piece. So we're just collecting. What I mentioned in my example of Beijing Limited is kind of the utopia where we do everything. And like Mish said, there's so many other applications. So there's collections, there's payouts. You could even support those merchant sellers with lending and financing. That's all available in the ecosystem. But as I say, we just do the collection piece.
Okay, thank you. Why is it called a virtual account if it's actually a real IBAN?
Good question.
That is a good question, isn't it?
I think with the physical IBANs, fundamentally these are accounts that are real accounts that the merchant has full control over.
Yeah.
It's like their own bank account. They access it like they would ordinarily access their own account. They can view their own statements. With the virtual account structure, the solution is different. While these accounts can either be in the business's name or the PSP's name, it's generally not controlled by the underlying merchant. It's controlled by the payment provider. In this case, Airwallex is fundamentally controlling these accounts, and these accounts are then used for repatriation of funds back. So I think it is a subtle difference, but it's an important difference because they are both bank accounts fundamentally, whether it's a physical account or a virtual account. But under one example, it's the merchant's own account that they control, like they would with their own bank account. Under the virtual account, that's not quite the case.
Yeah. Okay, and what about, do they come with a local sort code or equivalent, as some retail online banking platforms don't allow for IBANs but sort codes and account numbers?
Yes, as long as we've got access to that particular jurisdiction. So for example, the virtual IBANs that we issue for the UK will have a GBP sort code. The virtual IBANs that we will issue for the SEPA zone will have separate euro sort codes. The underlying accounts have to appear genuine in the local market. If that wasn't the case, then this solution just wouldn't work.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I spoke about virtual IBANs in the UK, one reason why there was an account and sort code, and I'm sure all of everyone listening in knows that an account and a sort code are just part of an IBAN. So it's all we have full sort codes and then IBANs in euros. Okay,
brilliant, thank you. Why don't you recommend having, for an example, an AED virtual IBAN from an AED master account based in the UK? Is it the speed of the payment?
Yes, it would then be, unless we had local access to the AED scheme, it would be a cross-border payment, which means that payment will take X amount of days, 2, 3 or 4 days for the payment to receive the end beneficiary. it's not quite a rounded solution.
Exactly, and then if it is a non-resident currency, you would question, it's completely cross-border, so you'd question why you just want to do it over SWIFT. It makes no sense to do that as a local payment. It's not a local payment network.
Okay. And what about which countries globally are you set up to issue virtual IBANs in today? Is it every country or there's certain countries?
So today we can issue virtual accounts in many different currencies.
Okay.
I think the list is growing. It's around 25 currencies that we can issue. But like I said, it depends on the user case. So, certain user cases we can issue all 25. I think for the collections model that we've highlighted for the marketplace space, those accounts really need to be local. And that list is growing. So today we've got the UK and the Eurozone covered. Quite soon we're going to have the US and additional markets included as part of the solution. And those markets, I believe, are ready for issuance towards the end of the year.
Okay. So I'm going to go back to, as the master account in countries held by Airwallex, is the payment made using the virtual IBAN in the name of Airwallex or Beijing Limited as the beneficiary?
So the funds are sent to Beijing Limited as the beneficiary on the virtual account. So so if you think about it, Airwallex sits above all the virtual accounts, and then we issue the virtual accounts underneath to Beijing Limited, Shanghai Limited, whoever, and they receive payments on those accounts. So the marketplace will not know that it's Airwallex Banking Circle. They will just see the virtual account name, which is really important. That's the whole purpose of the product.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So can Airwallex hold funds for a long time on behalf of its customers?
No. So at the moment in our model, we collect funds in the UK and Europe, and then we send them back to Hong Kong and China.
Okay.
And I think a lot of our clients, that's fundamentally what they use this for. This is not a depository service. This is a payment service. You're receiving funds, you're collecting funds, and you're making those payments. And that's reflective, from a client perspective.
Okay. I think, Mish, you mentioned a number of times that these aid reconciliation. However, what I'd like to understand is how can we receive reporting on the credits and debits to and from the virtual IBANs? Does this really cut out the operational cost?
Yes. I think, it's a good question. I think I addressed this slightly earlier on. I think every credit, every debit on each virtual account is reported on.
Okay.
Whether it is 1,000 IBANs, 10,000 IBANs, they're all reported on. And we've got clients that access the reporting through various channels, API, directly through our bank platform. They can also receive the reports in various formats, SWIFT Intra, and I think I mentioned earlier the 940s, the 942s. Regardless of format or channels, you can receive the reporting. And you'll be able to see the virtual IBANs credited, debited, and the names as well associated with the virtual IBANs and the header account details and name. So if we didn't provide this level of detail, I think, James, you'd probably say we'd have a problem.
Yeah, I think it's really important on the reconciliation piece, because it's not the most exciting subject. But if you think about businesses who maybe accept a large volume of payments, but not frequently at certain times of year, like a university accepting new students, they can issue a virtual account to all of those students so they know when they receive the funds for the next term.
Yeah.
So they don't need to have a finance treasury department doing reconciliations all year, because they have real peaks and troughs in their business. So I think the reconciliation point, while it's not very exciting, it is really useful to manage your business and your treasury operations.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, is it possible to receive Swift MT 940 messages per virtual IBAN? Apologies if I've said that wrong.
Yes.
It is?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I think I just want to say thank you very much. Everybody has we've had lots and lots of questions in. We're nearing the end time, but any questions that we haven't answered, we will come back to you via email. I think I've grilled you both quite a lot this morning. But I just wanted to say a very big thank you to you both. It was really good to hear, you know, about the product and also the customer perspective. I thought that was great. And I just want to let the audience know that if you have any questions for James or Mish, please, their email details are next to their pictures on the home screen. And also just to remind you, you can download a copy of the presentation by using the resources documents at the bottom of the screen. There'll also be a recording of this webinar made available later today, and you can access it using the same link that you've logged on to the webinar this morning. But for now, I just want to say a very big thank you to Mish and James. Thank you very much for your contribution today.
Thank you.
And
very much.
Wishing everybody a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.